channel. In today's video, we are going to be doing quite a bit. We are going to make a Mother's Day card for my mama and also a stationery set for her. So the first things first, I am taking a nod to Jennifer McGuire's organization. She recently posted a video where she puts a sheet of paper inside the storage pocket of something that she is inspired to use. If she has an idea, then she writes down that idea on a piece of paper and attaches it to that particular product so that the next time she's ready to create, she already has everything kind of planned out. So today we are making a stenciled card and stationery set for my mama. And I am using the Altenew Build a Garden Daffodil Delight. My mom's favorite flowers are daffodils, so I thought this would be super appropriate. I have a piece of just A2 sized white cardstock and then a craft card base. I created a whole bunch of envelopes off screen. I used this Hampton Art. Its number is SC1013 stamp set to create those envelopes. And I'll show you in detail a little bit more. I'm also using the Simon Says Stamp All About Mom stamp and die today to create the greeting for my card. Here's that Hampton Art set. I got this at Hobby Lobby, and it has this really cute banner that has several sentiments that will fit inside of it. That it also has Happy Mail, that little flower image, which is super cute. His hi, but I've lost that. Don't ask me where it went. Couldn't tell you. So anyway, I used that. I stamped first the banner in my MISTI. I put everything in my MISTI, stamped the banner on all of the envelopes, then went back and put the sentiment in. You could just as easily do that with an acrylic block, but it was easier to do it kind of assembly line style. So in true Altenew fashion form, they have this guide inside there that gives you inspiration and color choices and different ways to use and create with this particular product. And so I decided not to reinvent the wheel. And I took all of my color choices, color combinations from them. And I will talk to you about those colors when we get to it. So first things first, I took heavyweight cream or ivory colored cardstock. This is all from Hobby Lobby. And I cut it in half long ways, so at 5 1/2. And then I put a score line in there at 4 1/4. So when you fold this, it'll be an A2 sized card. I already went ahead and put all of my logo on the back of it and pre-scored it. This really helps speed up the mass production process. I am making 30 of these. This is what fits into the box that I have better. But you definitely don't have to make nearly this many. You don't have to mass produce this at all. This is just what I'm doing as the gift for my mother and my sister and my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law for Mother's Day. Not all of them are getting daffodils, but they're getting essentially a card and a stationery set. So I chose to use this particular floral stamp from that Daffodil Delight, and I really liked this little cluster of smaller, I don't think they're daffodils, but this really small cluster of flowers off to the side. I thought that was really pretty. Plus it kind of fit what I had envisioned a little better. So I'm going to put all of these inside my stamp positioning tool here, and I've never used this before. This is the first time I'm using it, so I'm just going to rub my hand over the side of, or over the top of the stamp just to help it take the ink a little better. And then in the inspiration in the Altenew packaging, they had gold heat embossed. I didn't want to A, take the time to heat emboss, and B, I usually get warping when I heat emboss of some variety, and I really didn't want any warping on these panels here. So I chose to do an ink that I felt would give me a fairly close goldeny color. And so I used Altenew. This is, wait for it. What is this called? Sand? Hold on. I will find out what this is called because I used it all over. I wrote down all of my ink colors except for that one. Go figure. That one is called Pink Sand. I felt like that was a fairly close goldeny color. And I'm just going to go through and stamp every single one of these panels. Like I said, I have 30 panels here, and I'm going to stamp every single one of them in this ink, in this spot, with this image. When mass producing, I find that if you just change the, here you see me stamping in the wrong spot, okay? So I lift the lid and I'm like, oh, you big dummy. Yeah, big dummy. Well, I wasn't entirely sure how these colors would work because they are on a cream colored cardstock, not a white. So this is going to be a test panel. So when I go and actually start applying inks, I'm going to use this one so that if I find that I don't like a particular color or something isn't quite working right, or maybe I want something with a little more dimension or variation or just depth of color, this is my test panel and I can better visualize what it's all going to look like on that one. So I eventually wisened up, flipped my paper around so that I didn't create that mistake again. You'll see later on that I accidentally dropped a yellow ink pad on top of one of these papers, and so that became the test sheet for a second color combo. Speaking of a second color combo, when I mass produce, I find that I can get kind of bored. I enjoy the process of mass producing, but sometimes it gets kind of redundant. And that's just the nature of mass producing. There's nothing wrong with that. But I find if I vary the color, even just a little bit, that at least gives me a little more gumption to continue and finish. So here, since I already have the stamp out, I'm going to go ahead and actually gold heat emboss. This is going to be for the actual Mother's Day card, not her stationery set. So I am going to gold heat emboss this. I used my anti-static powder tool from EK Success, rubbed that around with a dry paintbrush, and then stamped that in Versamark ink. And I'm going to actually stamp this twice. I feel like I kind of missed the center of some of those flowers. So I do stamp this twice, and then I'm going to go ahead and gold heat emboss that and set it. You know that your embossing powder is set, particularly your metallics, when they're no longer grainy. They are shiny and smooth. So I do end up doing that. And this is, like I said, for the front of her actual Mother's Day card, not necessarily for her stationery set. Please ignore the spot on my left hand. I burned my hand on cheese. Yeah, I did a good job. This is the best it's looked in a while. It's still kind of tender, but yeah, had a kitchen mishap. Here is that gold embossing powder from Ranger. Just going to tap off the excess, make sure there's no flakes where I don't want them. And then I will take my heat tool, which is in the top right of the screen right now. It is on and heating up. And I will heat set that. You know that it's heat set, like I said, when it's no longer grainy, but smooth and shiny. So this is more of an ode to what they had in their inspiration section. Since I had all my heat embossing stuff out, I went ahead and heat embossed this particular sentiment. So here is the sentiment from All About Mom. I chose to do the You Are Beautiful Mom. I know that there are times where I really need to hear that. Don't always believe it when I hear it, but I need to hear it. And so I just want my mom to know that she is beautiful, and I am very grateful for her. And so I chose this sentiment for her card. And I'm going to do the same thing, use my anti-static powder tool, stamp it in Versamark ink, and pour over the gold embossing powder and heat set it until it is smooth and shiny. Then I'm going to take the coordinating die and die cut that out. Now we're going to jump into the stenciling. So I have larger ink blending brushes and I have smaller ones. For these particular images, there are multiple sections of the stamped image on one stencil, if that makes sense. So in order to make sure I didn't get inks in places I didn't want inks, I used a smaller blending brush. These are actually purchased off of Amazon. I think you got 10 brushes and the stand. I think I purchased 2 of them and it was like $20 for both. I mean, they were super cost effective, and I am very pleased with them. In fact, I believe that, I think it's Pink Fresh Studio has brushes that look almost identical to this out now. Theirs come in a little box, but these are perfect. The bristles are very soft, and they don't shed. So I am very pleased with this, and I'm going to stick with them until they die. So here I have just started to stencil. I am using all Altenew inks today. So I'm going to give you all of the colors, and you can kind of see which colors go where. And for the most part, I try to keep everything in the same spot. So, on each individual flower. What I like about these stencils is that the first spot that you apply ink after going to your ink pad and then going to the paper is always going to be a little bit darker. I usually forget to kind of tap off ink. If you tap off some ink onto a scratch piece of paper or a cloth or your glass mat or whatever, you can kind of reduce that, not necessarily harsher edge, but just that more bold color. But that didn't bother me here because I wanted there to be some variation. I didn't want it to be completely flat. And so I kind of enjoyed the variation of color. I am showing you this all in real time, and I'm going to show you the first stenciling of each of these flowers all in real time and show you kind of what they look like completed. Like I mentioned before, I'm doing 30 of these, and so I figured you would want to scratch your eyeballs out and would unsubscribe if I showed you all 30. So I did turn off the camera and do this off camera, but I did want to show you the beginnings, at least of most of them, the first go around. So for the flowers that are supposed to be white, I used, this is Morning Frost. So that's what I'm using right now. It's a very, very, very pale gray. Whenever you're doing something in white, you're basically coloring in shadow. That's where your color comes from, is your shadow. And so I chose to just kind of continue to follow along with what Altenew had on their packaging as far as color combinations. I wish I would have chosen an even lighter gray, and maybe at times I just got heavy-handed. That's also something that happened, and that just came from playing and continuing to create and stencil and finding out, okay, this was too much, this was too little, where's the happy medium? And I got better as I went along, and as you can tell, that is the piece that I misstamped. I toyed with the idea of just going ahead and giving this to my mom and just making it seem like it was purposeful, but I chose not to. So anyways, I am just going through and stenciling in all of these sections. There are 2 stencils for this particular floral cluster, for this particular stamped image. The other stamp for this Daffodil Delight has 3 stencils to it. One of the things that Altenew is good at is not only are these stencils labeled on their packaging, but they also give you, the color ideas. They also tell you, okay, this, and this are on stencil 2. This, and this are on stencil 2 and 3. They're really good about making it pretty mindless, I guess you could say, which I'm grateful for. Like I said, I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. I really liked their color combinations. My mom's favorite daffodils are the ones that have the white petals and the yellow trumpet. Is it called a trumpet? Somebody that knows flowers and botany better, let me know. I think it's called a trumpet. The center portion, bell? Is it a bell? I think it's trumpet. Anyways, whatever it is, the center part of the flower is yellow. Those ones I believe are her favorite. So anyway, I am just stenciling in all of this using those mini ink blending brushes. Like I said, just to have a little bit better control. I didn't do fancy ink blending. Like, I really just laid down color. The only spot where you could quote unquote say I did like shading is on these leaves right here. And all I did was try to add more ink toward the base and less ink toward the tips of the leaves. That's all. That's straight up the only like fancy, like actual conscious shading that I did. And I still think these are beautiful. Like I said, these flowers look gray right now. They do dry back some, but I do like how those turned out. I do try to lighten my hand as far as those, whenever I use that Morning Frost ink, I do try to lighten my hand as I go along, just because I liked a more subtle tone to that and wanted it to indeed look white. And just like I had added some shading. So here is the second color combination. So let me tell you all the colors I used. So I used pink sand, and these are all Altenew inks. The pink sand, oh, that's the color I stamped the images in. I used snapdragon, maple yellow, just green, pastel sunrise, peach perfect I used on the actual card, and I also used and then the other colors are consistent across. And then I used Morning Frost, Fresh Lemon, and Honey Drizzle. The only time I used Peach Perfect was when I actually did my mother's card, not the stationery. So again, we're just going to go through and stencil in all sections of these flowers. This one, I'm going to call it a trumpet. We're just going to commit. I'm going to call it the trumpet, the middle of the daffodil. The first card, they were pink. This one, I'm going to do the main flower white. So I'm going to use that Morning Frost very sparingly. And then I'm going to do the center of it, the orangey yellow color. So I got smart and I kept the caps off of these inks and just stenciled them in. It was a lot faster. I had done 15 at this point. So it was pretty quick to realize, okay, this is how heavy I need to be with this particular color. This is how light-handed I need to be with this one. This ink pad's super juicy, so it lays down a lot of color. Like I said, as I went along, it went considerably faster. And by this point, I was getting kind of bored with the other color combination, so it was a perfect time to switch. And I did the exact same thing. The only time I added quote unquote shading or, was conscious and mindful about my shading was when I did the leaves. Everything else is just done with a very flat color. And again, I think it turned out really pretty. The small flowers on this one, I ended up coloring in yellow. And the only time I used the Morning Frost was on the large petals of the main daffodil. So I'm going to speed this up. This is about 4 times as fast as I actually stencil. It'd be pretty awesome if I could stencil this fast, but I do not. So anyway, I intend to make a stationery set for my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law, and my sister, all of whom are obviously mothers to humans. And I tried to choose to do images that I thought were something they would enjoy. So here is this second color combination. I think it turned out really pretty. I'm not sure which color combination is my favorite. I think my favorite color combination is the color combination I actually put on her card, which is this one. So I stenciled it, and here it is all stenciled, and I wasn't super pleased with it. It looked very flat, and it looked very similar to her stationery, which is not a bad thing. I just wanted it to be a little more special. So I actually get to the point where I change a few things, add a little bit more dimension, a little bit more color to certain things, and do some coloring over. So here is where that Peach Perfect comes into play. I decided that those little flowers off to the side needed to be pink. They just needed a little more oomph and pizzazz, and so I will use both of the stencils that color those. to make them pink. Again, I just felt like that was better. It looked better, it looked more interesting, and gave some separation from her card to her stationery set. So it didn't look like I just did all of the same things all over again. I wanted the card to be a little more special. That's why we did the gold heat embossing, and that's why I did decide to kind of change up a good portion of the color combination here. So I did kind of bump up some of the dimension in the trumpet of that flower and in some of the greenery, and I am much more pleased with how this turned out, and it looks so much different than her actual stationery set. So here I just die cut out that sentiment using the coordinating die. I just got new, kind of rotated out my plates, and it cut beautifully. So I was pretty excited about that. Cut perfect the first time. Can't beat that. So I'll put that all away. And then I chose to, I thought I had the coordinating die for this floral. I thought it came with a coordinating die. It did not. Could I use my brother's scan and cut to try to cut this out? Yes, I could. But I chose not to. So I'm going to trim 1/4 of an inch off of off of the left and the right hand side. And I'm going to trim 1/2 of an inch off of the top where there was more white space. This is going to give me a really nice border. I chose to do craft. I thought that was really pretty. I could have paired it with a pink or a yellow or an orange or a green, but I just thought the craft was really pretty. Here, I placed the sentiment and I'm like, okay, that looks pretty, but I feel like the sentiment needs something. So I know I do want to pop it up. But again, I felt like it needed something. So I have an Altenew artist marker. This is from the 4 Scoops collection. This is the Peach Perfect. And I am just going to color right over all of that embossing powder and just color this sentiment strip. I have heard many people say don't ever color over embossing powder with your alcohol markers. It'll ruin the nib. I have never experienced that. But that is something to be aware of. You know, that's your investment. You do with it what you will, but I've never had that problem. Now, I didn't sit here and scrub, you know, forever and a day, but I did put a light coating and I was not shy about going over the heat embossing. So here I chose to glue the floral panel, speaking's hard, y'all, floral panel down flat. I'm just using some wet glue for that. Like I said, you can see that I have a nice, 1/4 inch border all the way around, which I think is really pretty. And then I'm going to pop this sentiment up on Instant Dimension foam tape from Altenew and adhere that in that top kind of left open space that is there. Once I had that sentiment in place, I thought, okay, I need a little sparkle. I need something to kind of fill in some of this white space. My fine tip bottle is clogged. I need to get a needle and pop it. But I tried to just do this big old bottle. It did not work. I need to quit being so lazy and remember to actually get a needle so I can actually adhere these down properly because I struggled with that for a long time. So anyway, finally got those down. And then I thought, okay, you know what? Mom's card needs some shimmer. So this is a Wink of Stella pin. I squeezed it, and as you can tell, it squeezed all over my project. All over the card. All over it. I was very frustrated because I can't start over. Everything's adhered. This is the final stage. So I thought, okay, well, maybe that's just super obvious because it's really wet. It's really wet right now. Maybe once the alcohol in it dries out, it won't be quite so noticeable, and it wasn't. This Wink of Stella I have had for a very, very, very long time. And this is the I believe it's gold clear or glitter clear. Yeah. So anyways, we just ran with it. In the finished card, you can kind of see where that seeped. But I just ended up going over all the flowers and then the border on the craft cardstock just because I had spilled a bunch of it there. You can see some of that shimmer in these final photos. But that is it. So thank you so much for spending time with me. I know it was a longer video. I appreciate you, and I will see you next time.